What's going on, guys? It's been a while, but we're finally on to Fiendish Chapter 2. Now, I did Fiendish Chapter 1 a long time ago. It was one of my earlier reviews. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of fill us in on what happened in that and just kind of gloss over everything, at least things that are going to be somewhat relevant to this chapter here. So we have Casimir over here. He is, as a boy, he had his village attacked, and he is the sole survivor. Now, the village was attacked by what is only described as demons. They're tentacle monster-looking things that kill basically everything in its sight. And so he was spared. He was the only survivor there. He then later takes on a protege, his cousin Iskel. Now, Iskel, we'll find out later in this one, he was basically abandoned by his family, and he is what is known as like a cursed child, and we'll find out why later in this one as well. They are on like kind of a search and rescue mission, and when they find the person that they're looking for, there's a lot of signs that lead Casimir to believe that the demons have returned, and so they are on the hunt for this. This leads them to a caravan where Yomi here is part of. Now, she is a slave girl, and her master, Halbrand, doesn't treat her as a slave girl or any of his other slaves. It's actually more of a family thing. She very much loves Halbrand, and it is a theater caravan that they're all part of. So they're like actors and things like that. And when they stumble across Casimir and Iskel, they are attacked by a demon. This demon pretty much wrecks the whole caravan because it freaks out the horse that's carrying everybody. There's a crash that ensues, but also Halbrand outright gets just straight up killed, along with his daughter. Both of them are killed. We saw, I can't remember the daughter's name at this time, but the daughter has her arm just completely severed by this demon. And Halbrand just completely has the life just sucked right out of him by it. And so we got to see all of that. And we saw then Casimir fight and defeat this demon. But now he needs more answers. He is confirmed, okay, it is definitely back. And so he needs more answers. And that kind of is what leads us into chapter 2 here. So we're going to go ahead and get going. Irene Strykalski. I'm so sorry, Irene. I know I just butchered that. But she is our storyteller once again. Our colors are done by Carlos Nicholas Zemdido. Carlos. But now I don't normally point out the editor, but Michael Oden is our editor on this one, and for any who have been keeping up with this channel, you know that I'm a pretty big fan of his. So that's really cool to see. And so our opening page over here is just kind of giving us a quick summary like I just did on chapter 1. We have Casimir, we have Iskel, and Yomi. So those are our three main protagonists here. So our story takes off, and we have like the elder shaman over here. She has Yomi and is just trying to piece together all of the events of what's going on. And more importantly, we're looking at Halbrand and his family, because Halbrand was Yomi's master. And so basically the shaman just was like, okay, does he have any next of kin or anything like that? Yomi's like, no. And so the shaman's like, okay, well then we're gonna have to just sell you. So make yourself presentable by tonight. And she's like, well, what about Sandal? And now I don't remember exactly. It doesn't seem like he was Halbrand's son, of course, because Yomi just said that there is no next of kin. And we knew Halbrand had a daughter who was killed. So I think Sandal is just like one of the people that were also just part of the theater caravan there. And they basically all served as one big functioning family. So Sandal is kind of like an estranged brother, so to speak. But they are keeping him, since he got injured. They're keeping him, asleep to help the healing process and all that. And she's like, well, I can help with this. And she is denied. And she is like, we're not gonna have you get in the way. And she's like, well, that's the only family that I have. Now, this sparks some rage with the shaman. And it's like, how dare you, consider yourself equal with human? And Yomi is quickly reminded that her kind, the Daves, are not seen as anything other than slaves. And, regardless of how Halbrand treated her, that is not what she should be expecting. And she reminds herself, she needs to act in a certain way. And so she, lowers herself down and, is like, I was very close to my master. Can I at least see, attend his funeral as opposed to just being sold off? Can we sell me after the funeral? And the shaman has some moment of pause, but ultimately decides, loyalty with their master is a good thing. And so decides to allow that to happen and says, okay, fine. The following morning you will be sold then. And so what this kind of tells me is Yomi is quick to think on her feet. I think she is genuine that she wants to attend the funeral, but when she realizes that a stranger is going to be buying her, she needs to get herself a little bit more time to kind of come up with a plan as to what to do. So I think two things are true here. I think she actually wants to be there for Halbred because Halbred meant a whole lot to her. But since she can't be sold to Sandal, she needs to kind of figure out what she can do because she really does fear what might happen if she is sold to somebody else. She is not expecting the same kind of kindness from a different master. So then we pan away from the Shaman Temple and we kind of go out of the city and we make our way over to Casimir and Iskel's little hut or cabin. And Iskel is waking up, realizes Casimir's not there, and he's like, okay, well, Kaz said he wanted to go to the smith, so I'm sure that's where he is. He freshens up and makes his way out there. And we have some passerbys as Iskel makes his way out. Little girl notices, the marking on his face, and her dad is like, ignore him. He's a cursed boy. Make no notice of him. And so Iskel just kind of covers up his face, and he's like, yeah, nobody likes me. Nobody wants to affiliate with him, or as we're going to find out here in a second, with Casimir, because basically think of it like a social credit. He's an undesirable. Affiliating yourself with him will bring down your social credit, and nobody wants to deal with you because of who you're willing to deal with. So Casimir's over at the smith, and of course the smith doesn't want to deal with him because, again, Iskel. And because Casimir is always with Iskel, he doesn't want to. He says he doesn't want misfortune being brought upon him by dealing with Casimir. So Casimir's like, okay, well, you know what? I got something that can maybe alleviate some of that misfortune for you. And he pulls out what are called wraiths. So we have a shadow and a light wraith. Now, I don't really know what they do yet, but we will find out at least one of their purposes later on as the story goes. And this really catches the smith's eye. His whole tone, and he's willing to work with him. He's like, all right, fine. You know what? You give me those and I'll get it. And Kaz is like, no. Present me my weapons. He wants to trade in his axes from the previous issue and have some cleavers instead. And he used the metal of the axes in order to do that. And so he's like, no, give me my cleavers, and so long as you deliver on your end, I will make sure that I give you these two wraiths. And then he finds Iskel and tells him to pack up his things. They gotta get ready. They're gonna be leaving soon. We then come over to the shaman temple, and we see that the funeral is being done. There's a pyre and everything, and we see that the shaman is using rune magic in order to set the bodies, alight. And just a little attention to the rune here. We have a diamond with a lion in it. That is what's being used to set the fire. That is going to be important, I guess relevant for what I'll be talking about later on. And Yomi is watching the bodies burn and just kind of reflects on everybody. And just like, how did everything get so bad so quick? And then she remembers that Casimir and Izkel, got her out of that situation. She owes her life to them, essentially, If not for them taking on the monster, she'd be dead right now. And so at first she just wants to have permission to go thank them. But the shaman kind of cuts her off and is like, have you be sold to them? Absolutely not. Because again, nobody likes these two. They are outcasts. And she scoffs at the idea of even trading with them at all. And this kind of is like, oh yeah, I could just be sold to them instead. But this is already cut off. So she's like, well, it's worth, a potential whipping, but I got to make my way out there. So we cut back over to Kaz and Izkel, and Casimir is letting Izkel know what the plan of action is, that they need to go to a place called, I believe it's Thalfren, and speak with the shamans, in particular one named, I think it's Friggy is how you would say it. She's like the high shaman over there from what I've gathered. But first they got to stop at the main cabin, grab some supplies, grab Nina, and move on. And so just letting them know everything that they're doing. And then we cut back over into the town, and we see that Yomi has gotten out of the shaman temple and is just trying to keep a low profile as she makes her way through the town. And she's just kind of like thinking about, if this fails, what her fate might be. Like, she's just trying to kind of keep herself focused from what I'm gathering here. Is like, I have to do this. I might get whipped for it, but my fate could be a lot worse. She figures that because of her youth and everything, she's probably going to be like a bed slave and stuff like that. And that is not a life she wants. She makes a pretty decent excuse for the guard, because she tells the guard about who she's going to go see, and the guard's like, oh yeah, I remember those two bringing you in. And she says, like, that's my master. So the guard lets her go. So she is thinking on her feet. I like this. On her way there, she notices a man going to do a dehorning ritual. However, the mother, who I can only gather is a slave, just because it's a Dave like Yomi here, is trying to plead that this is too early and stuff like that, and is beaten for even questioning the man in this scenario. Now, Yomi tries her best just to kind of ignore everything, but decides after hearing the beatings and all this, she decides to take a very rash action. And she goes over and steals the kid and runs as fast as she can. And she makes her way out to an area and notices a cabin, and she figures that this is Casimir's cabin, at least from what we're seeing here. She's like, hey, wait, that's but before she can finish her thought, she is grabbed by the man and thrown down to the ground. Now, all the commotion does bring Kaz out, and he's like, what the hell's, what's going on? Hey, you kids, get off my lawn, kind of thing. And Izkel is quick to call out to Yomi. Now, that makes the man over here think, well, this is their slave, and he demands that Casimir beat his slave for stealing what they call the pup, or the child. And now Yomi, my guess is, again, from everything we've seen, this is all a lie. But she said that the child reminds her of like her child, and she just had to do something. She just wanted a moment to be with. Now, again, she is quick to think, and she's from a theater caravan, so I think it's all just an act. And Casimir does pick up on what Yomi's doing and plays along. Pretends to be Yomi's master and, scolds her for it. But also, in scolding, noted like makes mention that like she's ill and stuff like that. And so this kind of lightly diffuses the man. He's still not happy with her, but he's not trying to hurt her because now he thinks that he might get like ill or something like that. It's at least enough to keep him from beating her. And after Casimir tells Yomi once again to put down the child, she does. The drunken man spits on her and then walks off while scoffing at the cursed people. Now, Casimir is not exactly happy to see Yomi, but Izkel is. And Yomi tries to explain the situation, that she's going to get sold off to another master and she would rather be with Kaz. And Kaz is like, tough shit. I'm not taking this on. No way. Izkel, however, has a kind heart and is explaining what they're up to and actually invites Yomi to it. For which he is quickly scolded by Kaz and is like, no, we're not going to, I'm not catching shit for taking on this Dave. I'm not going to be told that I'm some sort of thief, I don't want this heat. I don't need her as a burden. And she's just a liability. I can't have this. And Izkel tries to rebuttal, but Kaz is not moving on this. And he's like, okay, Yomi, you need to be gone before I come back from the smiths. Otherwise, I'm going to drag you to the temple myself. Like, he is adamant. He wants nothing to do with this. And so he makes his way to the smiths, grabs his new cleavers, and he comes back and he's just, practicing with them, making sure that he can actually function with them. And he is very delighted for the way that they respond. Quite happy. And as he's training, Yomi makes her way back, and now she's got a sack full of stuff. And, unveils it to Kaz and is like, look, I got weapons, I got some dried food, I have jewels that we could use to barter with. I want to show that I'm not going to be a burden to you, that, this could all be useful. And to make it even more, like if I die while accompanying you, you guys can just keep it, no harm, no foul. And Kaz is like, okay, so what's to stop me from killing you and just taking it anyway? And I don't think Yomi really thought that one through. She has a moment of pause and ultimately is like, well, nothing, but I asked that before you kill me, can you just let me at least tag along long enough to figure out what killed my family? Now that gives Kaz a moment for pause as well, and he kind of reflects with like his family and says, okay, fine, you know what, you can tag along, but you're going to learn how to fight. You're not going to get in my way. And if you become a danger to either Izkel or myself, I will cut you down where you stand, and you will pull your own weight. Yomi agrees, and that's that. The trio then set off on their journey towards the main cabin, and Yomi notices that they're no longer on a trail. Now, I can buy that Casimir doesn't want to be on trails. He knows the woods fairly well. Also, trails tend to be an area where a lot of people travel, whether good intention or not. So if they're trying to be undetected in what they're doing, that's the better way to go. And Izkel is explaining, like, hey, we know where we're going. There's nothing to worry about. And then points out some of the things that not being on the trail has to offer. Like these creatures, now they kind of remind me more of insects, but what he's explaining to Yomi is one of the neater things about them is they can kind of transfer between astral planes by disappearing from one and reappearing in another. So sometimes you'll see them, sometimes you won't. And they just kind of do that. And then we get some writing from hunters in one of the trees, and the tree just lets them know whereabouts they're at. So it's the Shaolin Temple. It's a couple days out, and in the direction I believe it was like north by northwest. Also beware of a frost fang. Now, what's a frost fang, you might wonder? Well, you can kind of see it over here, but yes, as they approach the cabin, Casimir is attacked by a frost fang, which basically is like a big snow leopard. And we see that he's brought down. The two just on look in horror, but all is well. We find that this is actually Nina, the individual that Casimir needed to pick up before they started their journey. And so after a little bit of reluctance, everybody gets into the cabin, and Casimir lets Yomi know where she'll be sleeping. But before she can get too settled in, he's like, hey, come out. We got to do some training. And so they start off with some sword training, and things don't exactly go well for Yomi. And Casimir is just like, holy shit, you're bad. Like, you're not very good at this. And it's like, all right, let's try the whip. Let's see what you can do. And she's a bit more skilled and even catches Casimir's eye. However, he is a skilled fighter, grabs the whip, pulls her down, and then offers her a bit of advice. It's like, hey, look, if you're going to use that, if somebody grabs it, you need to let go or move forward. Keep your distance, use your speed. This is the better weapon for you, kind of thing. And also tells her, we will be training every day, no excuses, for which she agrees. Night falls, and we see Izkel is out by the fire. Casimir and Nina, they're gone. They're very fast asleep. However, Yomi is having some trouble sleeping, so she goes and sees what Izkel's up, and tries to go give like a friendly tap on the shoulder. But then she's horrified with images of the attack on her caravan and the death of her family. And she drops down to her knees, and Izkel's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And what we find out is this is the curse that Izkel has. He makes people relive their most painful memories, and unfortunately for him, he also has to relive it himself. So he sees what they see, and that's why he is considered cursed. The two just talk about a little bit of this, that, and the other. So, Izkel explains the whole thing with him and his family. Basically, it sounds like both of his parents abandoned him. Doesn't sound like either died. They go on to talk about Casimir and how he did have all of his family get killed. And then also talk a little bit about Yomi and her family as well. And also, Izkel compliments Yomi on her skills with the whip. And it was like, Yomi then explains that, hey, everybody in my kind of people, the Daves, they all learn how to use a whip at an early age. And we kind of then get some reflection on everything, which makes her go, I really need to figure out what killed my family. And so the night ends, and then we're treated to a little bit of a montage of them traveling, because they were still a couple days away from Thalfrane. So, they're just walking and enjoying the sights, and we see more reading and all that. And then suddenly Casimir orders everybody to be quiet and stop. And he's got his serious face on. He's like, now's not the time for fucking around and all that. And they're being approached by 4 individuals. And what we have are 2 men, and then these Neanderthal-looking guys. They're referred to as Burman. And Casimir, he's just kind of sizing everything up and trying to figure out, okay, if things get really bad, how am I going to approach this? I may need to get very crafty here. Now, one of the men over here, he says, hey, Blondie, you give me the slave girl, you give me the cat, give me your supplies, I'll let you live. And we see Kaz is he's not about that life. And we see one of these wraiths here, and he's got it behind his back out of sight. Now, I'm sure Izkel and Yomi can see, but his potential opponents cannot. And he says, how about you go rob somebody else, and I'll let you live. They basically laugh it off and was like, yeah, go fuck yourself, dude. You're way outnumbered. And your cat's not even fully grown. I don't think you're at the point of negotiation here. And so he's like, fuck it. Throws down the wraith, and it basically acts like a big old flashbang. Now, my camera's not going to show it too well, but Izkel does have his face hidden. We can't see Nina, so I'm not 100% certain what that's going to mean. But yeah, he's quick to take out the Burman. Now, Nina takes out one of the others and is stabbed for her trouble in the inner arm. And Izkel is able to take out one of the other guys with arrows. So what I'm saying is I don't know if the race affect the Frostfangs, if Nina also, because we were told that she's fairly intelligent, so she might have also gotten the idea of what to do, just like Izkel, shield her face. We can't tell. It's not my camera kind of thing. The shoulder over here hides Nina's face, so we don't know if Nina was able to kind of turn her face away, or if these wraiths just don't affect her type, the Frostfangs. So, but yeah, it's down to a one-on-one fight between Casimir and this guy over here. And so Kaz is he gets into a fight with the guy, and the guy is able to even dodge arrows that Izkel is trying to fire at him. And we get some inner monologue about okay, well, this guy's kind of sporadic. I'm going to have to get in close. And it's like, okay, Thalfran is not far, so as long as I can avoid getting hit in a major artery, I should be able to survive getting a little cut. I'm going to have to make kind of a sacrifice in order to end this fight. And so he gets in. He does get a little cut there, but he gets in, is able to stab. It doesn't go fully according to plan, because he does get punched and kicked off, but Nina is able to at least help bail him out. And then this is where the guy is like, oh shit, the tables have turned on me, and is now starting to plead with his life. He's like, sorry, we have no choice but to rob. Our entire village was destroyed by monsters. And it's the mention of the monsters that makes Casimir go, okay, wait, hold on, Nina. Don't eat this dude's head. Describe the monsters. And yeah, he basically describes the demons, the tentacles and all this, that, and the other. And so then now Casimir wants to know more. He's like, okay, how many, when, where were they at? And the way he described it is okay, this is a different demon than what I had to encounter. So there's more than just what I dealt with. And this guy gets kind of caught up. He says that he's got a son, and then also says he's got a daughter, and Kaz picks up on that quickly. He's like, first you say one, then you say the other. He's like, I got both. Please, I'll never thieve again. He's pleading for his life. And Kaz is like, I don't believe you. Now say your prayers. Izkel interrupts. He's like, Kaz, what are you doing? And Kaz is like, this guy tried to murder us. He's a thieving rapist. If I let him go, he's just going to come and get us. We have to kill him. We can't take him back to town and put him in jail or anything like that. This is how it's got to be. And Izkel continues to plead for this man's life. Casimir reluctantly decides fine. So he flips the guy over, slashes his tendons so he can at least not follow them, and tells the guy, well, you shouldn't bleed to death, and we'll just let fate decide, what happens to you. Maybe you live, maybe you die. I think it's fair. Knocks the guy out so he can at least not see where they're headed. But before they can leave, the guy that Izkel shot with the arrows, he rises back up and now is coming at Izkel with the knife. And he's got him like dead to rights. Izkel is completely off guard. But then he becomes a big old red splattery goo mess. And we see a figure in the back who is using fire rune magic. Now, I know that this is fire runes, and I'll explain that one later. And here we meet Ragna. Now, we saw her briefly in Chapter 1, but we get a little bit more on this now. And she is speaking a different language, which is translated in the back, and I'll touch on that more. But I'm not going to translate every single piece of dialogue. She's basically just, she's telling them to, like, get out of the way, notices Casimir, and burns the bodies, including the one that Kaz slashed the back of the legs with, who, before he dies, grabs Izkel, and Izkel is able to see, he was telling them the truth about the son and the daughter. However, they're already dead, and this frightens him quite a bit. Casimir comes over to his cousin and is like, hey, it's okay. You're safe, you're good, and calms him back down. And then Ragna and Casimir, they're speaking with one another. And that kind of reminded me a little bit of like Lord of the Rings with Aragorn and Arwen, how they would both speak Elvish and stuff like that. That kind of reminded me a little bit of this. We see that they definitely have a history together, and based on kind of like the rosier look of it, might have been more of a romantic history. You get a lot of that implied in this. They continue on speaking, and Ragna catches... Well, first she heals Nina, and we have a different type of rune here. We have the diamond with like a V towards the top, and I'll point more of this out later. But yeah, this is a different type of magic, and we'll touch on that. But then catches his company over here and has a particular hatred towards Yomi here because of, again, Yomi's kind, and thinks that Kaz has got her as, a sex slave. And Casimir is trying to explain, no, that's not what this is. And she continues to imply, like, that's, like, his little fuck toy and stuff like that. He's like, I told you already, that's not what this is. It's like, okay, so why is she here then? It's like, it's not really important at the moment, but we need to go see Friggy. And so, reluctantly, Ragna is like, all right, fine. But I don't... She's really hung up on Yomi at this point. But says, fuck it, let's just go. And tells them to take whatever they want from the bodies before they're completely burned to a crisp. And then burns them to a crisp. And while these bodies burn, we see inner monologue from both Yomi and Izkel on, just kind of processing everything. Yomi's got a little bit of reluctance as to what she's doing, and Izkel is also feeling pretty bad about everything that just transpired. Casimir comes over and just kind of is like, hey, look, it's good to have a good heart, but you gotta understand, this world will eat you alive. And you kind of gotta be cold sometimes, just because that's the way the world works out here. A kind heart can get you killed, but it's not a bad thing to have. And so basically, he's trying to reassure him that he's a good person for feeling the way he does, but Casimir has to act the way he does because he's got to protect everybody. And then just, at the end here, he tells Izkel he needs to straighten up and make himself presentable because of, who they're going to be stepping in front. And that's where our story ends. And I got to say, I'm a big fan of this book and this series so far. So we're in chapter 2, and it's been fantastic. I will say, I feel that this one is a little bit more improved over chapter 1. For starters, Casimir can be pretty prickly in that first one. I felt we softened him up a touch. We saw a little bit more humanity out of him than what we saw in the first one. He was real like standoffish, and there wasn't a whole lot. In this one, we saw right there at the end where he's just being kind of kind-hearted towards Iskel. He's just trying to be a good mentor to him. We also got to see, he had love in his heart with Ragna there. We see that there's more than just, a brooding hatred always in him. Also, the fact that Iskel was able to keep him from killing, but rather just make sure that they stayed protected as well. He's willing to listen and have his mind changed. But also, let me... when we first meet Nina... Yeah, right here. After everything's settled, Casimir's like laughing, and he's laughing at Yomi. He's like, you should have seen the look on your face. You look like you shit yourself. He's making fun of her because of a Frostfang potentially attacking, And then he does very much care for Nina as well. We also see another joke here when he first gets with Iskel and lets him know that that they're on their way. He tells him, let's go get our stuff. We're going. And Iskel is like, oh, sweet, where are we going? And he says, to the pleasure barges of Draka, to be lathered in honey and tits. And Iskel's taken aback. He's like, what? Really? And he's like, no. So it's like, we get a little bit of sense of humor out of him. He's not quite so standoffish. It's nice to see a lighter side of him. I think we got a good balance on this one. Iskel is very likable. He's kind of naive. He doesn't really fully understand the dangers of the world. He doesn't want to hurt anybody, even those who are trying to hurt him. And that could be a detriment to him, as Casimir was quick to point out. It's like, look, you got to kind of put a little bit of a stoniness on your heart there. Because if not, that could be your undoing. And Yomi, I really like her. Like I said, it looks like she's quick to think on her feet. She was able to buy herself some time. And both be a genuine request and also a means of not being sold right away, and give herself some time just to kind of think about what her next move could possibly be. She just doesn't want to be sold, and she's willing to go along with, some dangers and figure out what happened to her family. And she's willing to take on like extra training and whatever else might be in store for her, as opposed to being sold off to a slave and never getting to figure out what happened to those that she cared about. So Ragna is the only one that I don't have a whole lot of information on. She's quite powerful with magic, I can say that much, and quite the busty girl. But outside of that, I don't have a whole lot of information. Just that she is able to do a whole lot of magic. Now, speaking of magic, that is one of the things that I really like about this series. Now, the Fiendish series, I think, is good for like newbies to get into, who want to like get in on like a fantasy level, because you're able to kind of keep up with the flow of things. There's not too much like some of these fantasy series can do. They can just straight up overwhelm you. I don't feel overwhelmed at all by trying to learn new things. You get a basic gist of everything on how it all comes in. But what's really nice about this series is the back part of the book. Now, you get more information, and it's not important entirely that you do. So you get information on the Daves, Yomi's race, as well as Ragnar's race, the Ispalad. Yeah, I probably just butchered the shit out of that, but you get more information should you choose. And this is a very good one. I really like this. Now, we see all the rune casting, right? And we saw heat, again, the diamond with the line going vertical. And we also saw when Ragnar was healing Nina, the life one. So it's the diamond with the V up at the top of the diamond. And they look to be keeping very true to what should be used. We're not seeing too much confusion there. It explains like that they can be trained, what kind of limitations that they have, that it's basically dependent on the individual whether or not they're fully trained up. It does take a mental and physical toll on them, but that can be trained up. So, the better training that the person has, the longer that they can go. And also kind of like a quick form of the rune casting, because rune casting takes more time. They can do I believe, a less powerful rune called a knack. Now, it looks still pretty damn powerful from what we saw there. So I don't know what kind of limitations we have there. Now, here we have all the translations for what Ragnar and Casimir was talking about. It's all translated here. But the thing I really, really like about it, now my camera's not going to do enough justice here. So we get the translation, but then the pronunciation in the native tongue that they were speaking. And I think that is really, really neat. Irene really likes to build this world out quite a bit. We even have like the alphabet and all sorts of stuff here. What certain things mean. Like, all of this is fantastic. I really like this. And again, just like with the first one, we had the all the words and stuff like that, but we also had the map, and that is so cool. I really like that, and it really kind of helps immerse yourself in this series. So now for chapter 2, I gotta say we're somewhere between a 9 and a 10 out of 10, because this is the flaws. There was nothing major that I saw, and nothing really stood out to me even in the nitpicky way. So I'm leaning more towards a 10 out of 10. But we're only in chapter 2, so there's not a whole lot that can be really messed with as far as the overall story. But yeah, this is something really good. And again, this should be very easy for like newbies in the fantasy series to get themselves in. I'm not going to say I'm like a veteran for fantasy or anything like that. But yeah, this gave me no issues to understand how this world works. And for that, I really, really recommend this. And so if this sounds like something that would interest you, check the link in the description where you can get a copy for yourself, or at least who to follow for any second chance campaigns that may arise. But that is all I have for today, guys. So until next time, take care and God bless.